Okay, welcome back from the break. We are approaching the end. This is the second last session, and we're going to talk about SSI, self-sovereign identity. And I guess that triggers also some ideas and thoughts. As I asked yesterday, do we have a common understanding what a wallet is? I guess we don't really have a common understanding what SSI is either. We're going to have 3 presentations. We're going to have Marlies talking about SSI, or identity in education. Maybe SS, maybe not. We'll see. Peter is going to talk about IRMA, which is an operating functional SSI wallet. User-centric, at least. Okay. But the first presentation is by Alexander, and he's going to look at SSI from a business perspective. So, please, take the stage.
SSI from a business perspective.
Is that wrong?
Well, actually, I was going to hope to add to the confusion on what is what. Thank you very much. Yeah. Exactly, the Tower of Self-Sovereign Identity. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Alexander van der Walbaken, and I draw energy from innovating together. That's the reason I joined TNO some time ago. You familiar with TNO? More or less, well, just in one sentence, TNO is a research organization developing academic ideas into business concepts. Hopefully they get implemented. So we have lots of research on cryptography and quantum, etc. And I'm the lead of the SSI team, trying to use all of that information, all of that development of knowledge into practical solutions. And there we'd like to create an ecosystem and have the same ideas on self-sovereign identity. And there it goes wrong. Because having the same ideas, we have the discussions here many times already. What is a wallet? What is self-sovereign identity? What's this? What's that? That's what my talk is about, because I think we should have a common perspective on SSI, on decentralized economy, actually a common perspective on our solar system. So I'll talk to you about the Tower of SSI, because I always like to place my stories in a bit of an historical context. And we all know this story, don't we? For those who don't.
Pizza, or is it?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. No, it's the Tower of Babel. Exactly, it is. So there will be an analogy there later on, but it's the Tower of Babel. And you all know the story of the Tower of Babel, don't you? Because after the great floods, where Moses built his ark and put all the animals aboard, etc., finally the water disappeared, and people got out of the boats and wanted to build a city in Mesopotamia to live together. And they were so proud of themselves, they said, let's construct an enormous great tower. Because we're famous, and if we build this great tower, our fame will be spread. Of course, that's asking for some divine intervention, especially in those days. So that happened, and we all know what happened to the Tower of Babel, because it came crumbling down. Does anybody remember why it came crumbling down? Why didn't it succeed? What was the divine intervention? Anybody? Language, exactly. The same thing we find here. It's difficult to find concept and language. So if you're working decentrally on the same project, but you do not speak the same language, you misunderstand each other, and it will come crumbling down. Well, fortunately, we fixed that problem afterwards, because we built enormous constructions, from pyramids to towers in Dubai, and every year, and there's another challenge, building another tower greater for fame. And how did we do that? Well, it's easy. We had a project manager, lead architects. We expanded our circle of control to control everybody, a very centralistic model. And, well, that's not what we're trying to achieve here, don't we? Because we want to have a decentralized model. We want to stop the flaws of a central model. Because the flaws of a central model, well, of course, that will be personal sovereignty. Much of these towers, even this one, was built with modern slavery. And Julia even talked about data slavery yesterday. So there are a lot of snags we don't want to step into. We want to have a decentralized model on building on decentralized identity. But how do we make sure that we do not end up as a Tower of Babel if we do not speak the same language, which was proven over and over again in this discussion? That's the question I will hopefully try to answer. Because actually we're at two levels. At one level, if you look at the technical level, we're about a teenager, somebody in his adolescence phase with a skateboard. It can do very nice tricks. Sloes can do very nice tricks with the Riose. Irma can do very nice tricks with Riose. On a technical level, it works. And you can exchange credentials. It really is something we can be proud of. However, if we take that to the boardrooms, we are toddlers and refusing to work together. We are still trying to do it ourselves. In a decentralized world, of course, that's not possible. We need to collaborate. And this is the problem I'd like to tackle. We have, on one hand, we have a technical solution with a technical push, which is quite mature. But if we look at the business, they're lagging behind, and we need to level that. There is a very practical solution to that. We need to learn them to play together. We need to have one universal language or to define decentralized identity. And the good thing is, it is already developed. Most of it is already there, but we should start using it. Do you know this guy? Neither did I before I started working on this presentation. It's Bernard de Chartres. He was a French philosopher, and well before Isaac Newton, he already wrote about we are merely dwarfs standing on the shoulders of giants, pointing out that you can only discover the truth by building upon previous discoveries. And that's what that's what we're talking about, because we do not do that. In my period, I work at TNO, and by the way, I'm also the community manager for the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. I see a lot of use cases, and I see a lot of energy in trying to work this, and I see a lot of focus on requirements. How can we scope a certain project to work with SSI? And I see a lot of energy going into defining wheels, because we need wheels to make this work. And while defining wheels, we'll define track width, and we end up with developing trains with different track widths. And this is a map of the world where all the different track widths of trains are in. And it's not really an interoperable system, isn't it? So that's something we should try to avoid. So we should build upon the knowledge which is already out there, and append on it. And that is really difficult. Yesterday, Peter of Capgemini also referred to the model of actor party actions model we developed in the SF lab. Do you know the SF lab, please? Hopefully, 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. Because the SF lab is one of these resources where many of the models which are defined, which out there you can use, but they're not easy. Using a new model, using a new paradigm is like learning a new language. And well, I speak several languages, and I could not learn them from a book. Who could learn a language from a book? Really reading a book and with learning the words, etc.? No, of course not. You go out there, you make friends, you drink beers, you try, you fail, you stand up again, and you learn to yield that language. And I heard another very nice story because I was listening into a podcast series of NRC Handelsblad, which is a Dutch newspaper, about consciousness. And they were looking into the different angles of consciousness. And they had a very nice story about congenital cataract. So cataract is often is a disease where elderly people develop, where you cannot see clearly anymore because your lens gets troubled. Apparently, it's possible you're born with it. And of course, in Europe, you get operated and your lens is replaced and you develop normally. But in certain African countries, that's not the case. So you grow up with congenital cataract and you learn to see, you develop your consciousness by your vision on blurs, on colors, and that's it. So several scientists went to, I felt it was Nigeria, and they found some people with congenital cataract, and they surged them, they cured them, they put in a new lens with the zero hypothesis that they could immediately see. But of course they couldn't, because they never learned how to. So for example, if they saw a bicycle parked against a wall, they could not see the bicycle, they just saw the wall because that was a large object. Only when the bicycle was started to move, they could recognize this as a whole structure and then they could recognize it again and again and again. And it's the same thing with mental models. You need to learn to use it. Same thing with languages. You cannot learn from a book. You have to go out there and use them. So it's my call upon you to build upon the work of others, try to use them, and fail with them, and append and again. Because to append on those models is necessary. We're not there yet. What we should not do is standardize everything. Imagine back in 1996, USB was immediately the standard for mobile phone chargers. Our phones would definitely look different. And Apple would never have invented the Lightning connection and appended on the USB-C, which now becomes the standard. So you should always append on standards. But that means we have different standards currently, different standards next to each other. And if you want to collaborate, you have to make sure that you're talking about the same standards. Yesterday there was the analogy with a screw. I immediately thought, would that be a metric screw or would it be an English screw? That's really important, otherwise you have crashes like this. And you can... There's two ways on seeing if you speak the same language, you yield the same vision, you yield the same paradigms. One is superimposing your circle of control. I tell you what to do. That's not something we want to do, isn't it? You should expand our circle of influence and let other circle of influence expand to me. Listen to each other, see if we have the same ideas on this specific topic, so we can develop together. And it's not only in a project where you collaborate with your partners in a value stream or in a supply chain or in an ecosystem. I've heard many different ecosystems here. We had an ecosystem about mobility, about transport. Today we have an ecosystem about information security, about identity and access management. We have ecosystems in Europe. We have ecosystems in Australia. We have ecosystems in the Netherlands solely. We have governmental ecosystems, many ecosystems. And we all have the same, problems, paradigms we have to deal with. So I'm missing a slide here, I think, so I will briefly go over it. But we should consider SSI as kind of the water cycle. The water cycle, do you remember geography in the first grade, second grade, secondary school? Well, my son is now 13, now he's learning it, so I thought it was a very nice analogy. Because water, if it's in the sea, it evaporates by the sun, it goes up in the clouds, and then that's another ecosystem. And then it moves to the mountains, it rains down to the mountains, another ecosystem, down to the forest, another ecosystem, to the rivers, another ecosystem, into the sea and back again. SSI should be the water cycle on how we work together. We should yield the same paradigms, the same language, even in different ecosystems, because we all have the same goal. And so my call upon action is, please, let's yield the same language. Let's expand also our circle of influence and listen to others trying to work with us. And then we should have the same vision on our solar system. Does anybody know what this picture is about? It is our solar system, but from a geocentrical view. So the Earth is in the middle of it. And by years and years and years, the ancient Greek could describe the beautiful revolving bodies around the Earth, and that it was really difficult to do so. And, well, of course, Galileo, proved in the end that it was a lot simpler. And I don't care which model you use, because they're all true. You describe the world around you from your point of view. But you should make sure that you yield the same way of looking at the universe, whether it's a geocentric or a heliocentric version. And, well, if you're looking at simplicity, the heliocentric one is a lot more simple than the geocentric one. So that's what I would like to conclude with. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we learned something important now. I thought we were identity nerds, but we are identity toddlers, is what you're saying.
Definitely. Yeah.
Give some interesting views of the conference of all the toddlers running around and trying to agree on stuff. And standards, as I say, everybody thinks standards are so important. That's why everybody has their own. Okay, Marlies, we're going to hear about SSI or not SSI in education.
Yes, we shall see. We'll see if we
We'll
end up with
see about
SSI
that.
in
Take it away.
education. Yeah, so thank you, Alexander. I'm not sure if I'm more or less confused, so we're going to just try and stick to what we are actually doing at the moment. I do know that the toddlers we deal with are those in the boardrooms at education institutes, so hopefully we can help them collaborate a bit better. So yeah, who am I? I'm Marlies Rikken. I'm a product manager, trust and identity at SURF, and I'm also a board member at MyData Global. And yeah, today I'll be talking about what we do at SURF and how we help our educators do more with identity. And I'm going to assume that not all of you in the room know what SURF is. And yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about that. SURF is a cooperative for education institutes and research institutes in the Netherlands. So we are focused on the Netherlands mainly, but we do have cooperations internationally as well. Yeah, a cooperative means that we basically do everything for our members. And our members are, in our case, higher education institutes and researchers, etc., but also applied sciences, in our case, HBO or MBO. We have basically a sister organization called Kennisnet who does similar work, but for primary education. So we collaborate with them a lot as well. So what do we do for those members? So we actually provide networking and IT infrastructure for all of those institutes within the Netherlands. And we also look at digital innovation. So we have services that we offer them, but we also look forwards to see how the future trends actually influence the infrastructure that we offer. And in the case of identity, well, SSI is one of the big ones. So that's why I'm here talking to you about that. And yeah, so the knowledge that we acquire, the work that we do, we want to share that within our community. So those members come together at events and webinars, etc., that we host, and we help them collaborate with each other and with us. So yeah, we do think that collaborating together is indeed important, and we try to facilitate that. So when we try to bind institutes to us, that's also one of the main points that we try to convince them with. And for those, especially those that are from the Netherlands, you may have used some of our services before. So EduRoam is one of the big ones. It's networking that originated from us and might also be used internationally. And you also will see that there are quite some identity components here. So you see EduID, you see SURF Research Access Management, there's Secure ID, and also SURF Connects that I'll be talking about a little bit more. So digital identity is one of the big things that we do at SURF. And we do that with about 18 people, I think. We have a team of that size, and we work specifically on those services that we offer. And there's also other teams, for example, Edu Badges, that will come across in this presentation that work on verified credentials as well as a specific team. So we do have some power to try and make these innovations reality. So we do have quite some knowledge on that. So how do we actually do it? So one of the ways we actually supply identity and supply our institutes is by our identity federation, SURF Connects. So basically, for those of you that, I'm assuming that there's quite a high level of knowledge, so I won't go into detail about what federations actually are, but in our case, it's a hub and spoke federation. So every institute has their own IDP, their own identity provider, and they connect that to SURF Connect. And at the same time, they can say, hey, I have a new service, I want to connect that to our federation, and then we make sure that those services are connected. So EduTech is supplied by the other side as well. And that gives us some advantages. So you have, as an institute, you gain access to all the Edu services, also services that might be used by other institutes. And the other way around, for those services, you have connection to all of the institutes immediately as you join the federation. However, that does, and thinking about SSI, that does mean that control over what services you can access as a user will be determined by the institute. So the institute, for example, has dashboards by which they say, okay, these Edu services can be connected to with our login system. So that is limited. And if we think about SSI and user centricity, that of course doesn't really match. So we want to see if we can empower the users a bit better. To share a little bit about how big the federation actually is, we do have quite a number of users. So in the past year, we had 251 million logins via SURF Connect. So that is quite a number, and it keeps on growing. So if you see the number of services we connect, that's increasingly growing as well. I think we've by now passed that 199, so I think we're now at over 200. And we see the federation growing. However, as noted, with SSI, we might have different principles, and do we really want to, keep this way of working, or do we maybe need to change it up? Well, because there are some limitations. And yeah, as I mentioned, one of those is that the institute determines which services you can connect to. But there's also others. So you have your identity as you are a student while you're studying. So you might get your University of Wageningen account, but when you leave, you will lose that account and you will not have that identity anymore. So how does that support, user centricity and maybe lifelong learning? And that's where potentially the road to SSI comes in. Because we see several trends within education, like flexible learning. We want to place the student more in the center of their learning journey. So you might make the decision to follow one course at one university, follow a minor at the other, or finish your master's study somewhere else. And how the current system doesn't really support that as fluently. At the same time, maybe you want to continue your study after your education is finished, and you want to be connected to the labor market maybe as well, and those aren't really as included at the moment. And at the same time, we also see, obviously, the identity wallet developments that have been spoken about around this event, I'm sure, continuously. So we see ADAS 2.0, and we see, hey, there are identity wallets coming. How should we, prepare for those influences in our systems? Well, one of our answers, or one of our current answers that we have, is ADoID. So already before the term SSI was a thing, we were thinking about developing an identity that would last the student a bit longer than their current identity does. So if you read those principles around ADoID, you will see there is some overlap with the principles that we see in SSI. So we believe it should be the identity connected to the person, it should be under control of the individual, it should respect privacy, it should last you your whole life, etc. So ADoID is the way that we think, or we at least for the moment think, that we can support the student in that way. And those overlaps with SSI are certainly relevant. So what do we actually already provide? So there was some mention in the hallways about guest access already. So one group that isn't really supported by institutional logins is guests. So you might end up as a researcher or as a temporary tutor, etc. Or maybe you want to follow a single course and you don't have an institutional identity. So that's where ADoID comes in, and we provide ADoID as SURF. So I don't know if I noted that before, but we are the ones providing that within SURF Connect. And then you can still have access with ADoID to the services you might want to use at your institute. Another one is micro-credentialing. So we have, I mentioned already, our ADO badges team that is providing verifiable credentials for education. And you need to have your ADoID in order to acquire that badge. We're also working on helping students become more flexible when it comes to their education journey. So following courses at different universities, and specifically minors. It's something we're piloting right now with different universities in the Netherlands in collaboration with each other, where they use ADoID as a login to make sure that they can take part in a certain course and do that at a different university than their home institute. So we are continuously developing this, but this is still one IDP connected to that federation. So it's standing next to all those other identities that the institutes are providing. So that doesn't fully adhere to the SSI principles as we might want them. So where does that leave us? So at SURF, we are trying to at least do research and see the actual implications of the SSI principles on our services. So one of the things we want to do is learn. And that's why we're doing pilots also with some people here in the room that we are trying to actively research, like, hey, what would it mean if we would take IRMA and we would combine that with the ADoID IDP we now have? And where does that leave us in terms of responsibilities towards our students, towards the institutes? What does does it have legal implications for our role as SURF? What does that mean? So that's what we're trying to learn from, and we're trying to share that information also with our community. That's why we founded our SSI lab. And in the SSI lab, we try to connect to other groups within SURF itself, but also with the other institutes, and try to share knowledge. Another thing is piloting also with ADoID and ADO badges, so we try to continuously learn and gather more information. And another thing is the HOSA, and the Dutch community here might know there are several reference architectures when it comes to governments, and for us the HOSA is an important one. And they also are working on mentioning SSI as a component for higher education in the Netherlands. So we're working together with them to see how are you actually going to define SSI and what is that actually going to mean. So that is a continuous process, and we're trying to stay in touch with them and see how that will work out in reality. So some of the actual activities are listed here. I won't go through all of them, but probably, as some of you know, the large-scale pilots are coming along. It's a thing. And yeah, we're participating in one of them, the DC4EU project, also again together with SIDN, IRMA, and BZK. And yeah, we'll see if we can formulate. If we are successful, we'll see if we can formulate use cases around diplomas, etc. So yeah, we'll have to see how that works out. And if we go a little bit deeper, I don't know how much time I still have, but then I can take some to okay, keep going. Yeah, so if we try to map the SSI roles to education, yeah, it becomes a little bit more concrete, right? So we divide it up into two separate roles, the primary participants and the secondary. So the primary participants are pretty obvious. So we have our students and our researchers, they will be the holders of their identity. And next to that, we have the issuers of credentials. Those will be the institutes, right? They know if you have that diploma, or they know if you successfully completed your course. And they might turn that into a micro-credential and give that out. The verifiers, on the other hand, might also be the institutes, someone that you might be following that minor with, that wants to know if you've had your previous courses done. Or it might be the edu services that you want to connect to. Like, hey, I'm the student at this university, and I'm going to use your Blackboard or Brightspace or whatever it might be. So the secondary participants is where it becomes a bit more interesting. So one of the issues or one of the challenges we have is how to connect to employers. Because as I told you at the start, our baseline, our membership, that is the institutes. And employers, they do have a lot of interest in the credentials, etc., that we provide. But is it really our role, really the role of SURF, and really the role in our ecosystem to provide that information to employers? And how does that relate to, for example, the diploma registries at Duo that we have? So that's something that we're trying to figure out. And the verifiers, again, yeah, might also be generic services. So maybe Domino's wants to know if someone is a student. They want to give you a discount if you want to buy your pizza. So how are we going to connect many, those services that want to know something about the student or about the researcher can be endless. So how are we going to manage that? And even if we stick to our federated model, that could explode to a gigantic amount of connections we need to make. Yeah, so there might be a wallet coming, or might be multiple wallets coming, and in the case of the Netherlands, maybe it will be IRMA, maybe it will be multiples, and we also need to figure out how to deal with a multitude of wallets potentially that need to connect to those institutes or need to connect to Duo. How are we going to supply those credentials? And yeah, one of the components that's quite important for us is the DBI, or the digital bronidentiteit, the PIT. I'm not sure what the English term they use for it is at the moment. But yeah, so one of the issues we have with EduID is how can we increase the level of assurance of our identity? And we know that there are plenty of vendors around here as well that supply, passport checks, or you can scan any passport, but we have to take into account that students can come from anywhere. They can come from all over the world, and there is some issues when it comes to reading out those passports if they have strange signs in them or whatever it is. So yeah, it's not always guaranteed to work. And so we're trying to figure out which group of users can we provide with a secure identity in which way. And for the Dutch group we have, it might be that we can take that source identity from the government as a baseline to improve that level of assurance. But still, that leaves a group that we need to supply an identity with. And maybe, who knows, the European identifier might come in, but there's still a lot of discussion. Will that be a thing? Will that not be a thing? So there's a lot of questions open on how can we make that secure identity real? Will it be part of the wallet? How will that be part of a wallet? How does that work together with EduID? So a lot of things to keep into account. And yeah, the list is quite long, so I won't go over all of them. But yeah, one of the important things is if we would move from our federated model that we have towards SSI, what does that look like? And how can we offer the institutes that we have a roadmap towards that? So, just as there are municipalities of every kind, big and small, and maybe with a big innovative team, or someone maybe has one person working on identity in their institute, how can we help them? So we need, we were already thinking, like, how can we prepare them for a move if needed? Yeah, and then there's also other things, and those who are familiar with my data will know the BLTS sandwich, but yeah, there's also business questions. There is legal questions, societal questions. What does it mean for a student if you have complete responsibility over your own personal data? What does it mean if you make a mistake in your learning journey? Is that all on you? Where's the responsibility? And how does that translate into legal roles towards each other, for us towards the institution, but also for the student towards the institution? Many questions. And to close off, I will also note that it does change potentially the business model. So the cost model that there is now for education, when your student finishes at your uni, you will get your amount of money for that student that finishes its education at your institute. But what does that look like if a student does one course at your university, does one at the other, and combines his learning journey together, that cost model completely changes. And so we do see some hesitation there from institutes as well. It's not like they're all jumping like, yeah, SSI is coming, let's go do it. Oh, no, wait. It might change a little bit about the control I have over what the student does with their information. I'm not in control any longer over my IDP. So potentially that might be SURF that will have more control. Who's supposed to have that control? So how do we, make sure that the governance over this ecosystem is realized in a proper way? Who can we trust? Is a question. So I'll leave you with that, I think, for now. It was a lot, but there was also a lot to tell. If you want to know more, there is a webinar that takes like an hour. I think Niels here in the room has done a very good job at talking about that. And there is also more info about SURF Connect. So just let me know if you want to know more. And yeah, thanks for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you. And I think, in many cases, universities sort of lead the way in some cases by doing this stuff. I'm also hoping that we'll take into the consideration, I come visiting with my Norwegian wallet and I'm going to be at the university. I could use that. I don't have to have yet another one, especially since I don't speak Dutch and so on. We'll do some questions at the end after we listen to Peter that's going to talk about the IRMA wallet.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Peter and I'm working at SIDN. We have a digital identity wallet named IRMA. People from the Netherlands probably know it. What I want to do today is share some insights, share some challenges around how we see the world, how we try out these new kind of wallets, because it's already an operational wallet in the Netherlands. But also hopefully discuss some challenges in the room, how we're going to deal with Europe, deal with our own government, deal with all kinds of organizations who want to try these wallets. So we have a lot of stakeholders in the room, a lot of roles in the room, and how are we going to combine those roles? I assume that most of the people in the room know this moment last year where there was a big press conference from the European Union announcing that it is time for a digital identity for all Europeans. And of course, yesterday we discussed it, but of course the part of that is a wallet, and what a wallet is. I visualized it as a mobile phone, but it could be also, yesterday discussed, it could be also be something different. But when you look at what the European Union is stating about a wallet, it's talking about storing your identity data, it's about credentials, it's about attributes, all stuff we already heard in the room. But it's also about authentication, so login stuff. Yesterday, password is dead, so that's combined in this one magical wallet. And it's providing all kind of data to relying parties, so that it's broader than only identity. So if I want, for instance, know your income, could I get it from some source and share it with another and a relying party? And last but not least, all kind of signatures, but all kind of authorizations. And that could be a quite broad thing, quite broad functionality. We see, for instance, the municipality of Amsterdam also is trying out in voting. If I really know who you are, why I can use this kind of authorization to vote for some now simple stuff, but maybe in the future for more complex voting stuff. When you're zooming in this wallet, what should that wallet be? I already mentioned it. It should be about who you are, who I am, around identification, about verification, about authentication. There's all kind of stuff around your ID. It's about data sharing, what I am or what I have. It's a nice distinction because what I am or what I have. It's, of course, depending a lot on the data sources you could connect to. And let's be honest, we are still in the beginning of, especially in the Netherlands, in the beginning of connecting to data sources. We hope that our government is really opening up some critical sources because when we have data, then you can fill your wallet and then you can run use cases. And now we see that we have more and more wallets, but very small data, or you can scrape it, of course, but most the real data you want, of course, to connect to. When you have enough data, of course, then you can do some interesting stuff next to sharing, some proving, some already this morning was about hotels check-in, check-out stuff with those credentials, and all kind of ticketing stuff. That could be all kind of building blocks that's provided within this wallet. And the last thing I already mentioned this about what I agree to. That could be a signature, that could be an authorization, and delegation is also quite interesting when you talk about groups. Yesterday was a talk about groups that are not able to, or maybe it's a simple, I want to get something for you, and I need some small delegation that I can get that parcel at the post office, and I'm delegated that I could collect that parcel in name of you. So that's also an interesting thing, because when you talk about the number of times you are using stuff, is what I agree to is maybe quite high frequently use of this wallet where you agree or stuff, and that's of course the holy grail we're looking for, because if you have a nice wallet and you only use it once a month or once a year, yeah. What's the meaning of this kind of wallets? We're looking for use cases that is as a high frequency, and it could be in this last category that you have a lot of use cases that you can use this wallet with. An interesting thing, I put it not into the box, but under the box here is this wallet also contains payments. When you look at the EU and the large-scale pilots, they also talk about one customer journey. They also talk about payments, and is that a step out to a payment wallet, or is payments part of your wallet? Is also an interesting question. If we also the question: have you one wallet or more wallets? Are they interconnected? So that's also an interesting thing to see: is how seamless is your journey, and how many wallets do you have to fulfill this journey. When you look at this wallet, it is of course, already was mentioned multiple times yesterday. It's part of an ecosystem. It's part of an emerging ecosystem, and the big change is of course that in this ecosystem you are in the center of this ecosystem with your wallet, and from that center you could collect from all kind of sources your data, and of course on the other side you can share it with all kind of use cases, with all kind of relying parties. Yesterday we discussed in the middle, is this a thing on your phone or is this a thing in the cloud? Maybe it is both. It is maybe a hybrid thing that you could connect with several devices, or maybe yesterday was a nice example of generic, when you are in the car, maybe the car recognizes you, but is the part of the wallet and part of the car that can pay, that can maybe even have some preferences, or all kind of credentials, all kind of attributes that is relevant for that context and is relevant for that car. And of course, then is the interesting question: okay, what is the technology beneath it? Is it decentralized? Most of our, when I compare to IRMA, or match it on IRMA, the most of the stuff is decentralized, because we have a part on the issuer side and a part on the relying party side. One of issuing data, of course, and the other side of verifying data. We have a small, and that's also an interesting discussion, we have a small centralized part, and that is around checking your PIN code. There, of course, when you read the stuff from the European Union, it says that it should be available in online and offline mode. When you are having it available in offline mode, is okay, how do you log in? Of course, you can have the whole key on your device, but it's less secure than when you have half the key somewhere on another place. And that's our solution, because we have half the key on our IRMA key share server. And also, there's an interesting challenge when you lose your wallet and it's still active on your phone. How do you disable it from a distance? And when you have half the keys somewhere else, of course, then you have a possibility to block this app, this specific device. And when it's all on the phone, then you have an interesting challenge. Okay, I lost my phone. I don't want to this be a possibility that someone is misusing my phone and my identity. How I'm going to block these kind of services. Of course, yesterday was also when you have a blockchain beneath it, you issue there and you verify there. So on the technology side, probably we could do it on different ways. We use cryptology. You could use the blockchain, and maybe you say with PKI is also a technology which you can facilitate this kind of ecosystem. So it's quite interesting. Next month, in October, the European Union has a new version of the architectural reference framework. Hopefully they're going to state something around technology. Of course, then there's also the reference wallet is starting. Then you can see what they choose for what kind of technology. And then also, I visualize it in this kind of picture we are trying to solve with each other, because what I talked about Europe is on the left side. You see some legislation, you see the architectural reference framework, you see the reference wallet, the toolbox, all the large-scale pilots, all kind of things are organized as part of the solution from Europe. The second part of the puzzle is, of course, our own member states, because the European is saying to the member states, okay, you should provide this wallet, you should provide this digital identity. So we are for part in the hands of our government, of the member states. And yesterday was also when you talk about a ecosystem, they are more or less the orchestrator of this ecosystem on the slide before this slide. Who is orchestrating this ecosystem, and who is the producer and who is the consumer in this ecosystem? I believe that the governments are in the role of an orchestrator of this ecosystem, because the European Union is stating that you should provide a digital identity and you should provide your own wallet or certified wallets. You leave it to the market and certify those kind of wallets. So, and it's interesting to see that the Dutch government now we see that they are starting to provide their own wallet. So they start their AD community, the European Digital Identity Community, around open source. I think that's a good step, an open source wallet. And maybe that's also because we saw in Belgium, of course, we know there's the famous wallet It's Me, but it's more a commercial wallet than a governmental wallet. And they were a bit surprised around in Corona times that when you talk about the business model and about what you pay for a transaction, that the amount they charged for a transaction was not in their own hands, but It's Me was in control of what was paid for a Corona check. So we see that the Dutch government is thinking, okay, should we leave it all to the market? There's another discussion in the Netherlands. Should the market decide about everything, or should we have some control in this market? So we see that the reason why they want to start now with an open source own wallet is to have some influence in this new ecosystem. And of course, that will be the next step. It will open up to all kind of wallets that can connect to this ecosystem. So we have a member state part, and of course, most of the organizations are on the right side, who are providing wallets, or are working on use cases, or are issuing data, or are working all kind of nice authentication mechanisms to connect all kind of stuff in the private domain. And last but not least, is an interesting talk of an interesting discussion. Okay, are we going to connect all these issuers to all these wallets, and all these wallets to all those relying parties, or are there parties in the middle, the syndicates of this world? Are there brokers who are the multi-connectors in this ecosystem and are in between here, are in between the wallet and all kind of verifiers, and maybe also in between all kind of data sources and all kind of wallets? It's an interesting discussion. It was yesterday also, because then you have a party in the middle, which is again a central part of a solution in this ecosystem, and that could be good. That could be also have some challenges. And we look at the challenges. advocate these 4 design principles. We can dream those. This solution should really be privacy by design. So when you're looking really in the technology, is it really unlinkable? For instance, when you are coupling or interacting with different parties, is this really about data minimalization? Also yesterday in several talks. Decentralized is important, no surveillance, because when you look, of course, at the American system, it's commercial. That has a important say in your data, because they monitor you, they manipulate you, and then of course monetize your data. And we've seen on the other side of the world, the Chinese system. It also starts with monitoring, with surveillance. They manipulate you to be a model citizen. That's the other model we see on a global scale. So decentralized solutions should be important, because we want no surveillance, and of course also no monopolies. One party who has all the data and has all the. That's the third one. Hopefully, this is an open system, an open source system. So it's transparent how it works, but it's also open to work to cooperate with each other. And last but not least, of course, the user should be central. It's your data, you decide, so the users should be in control of this new ecosystem. How far am I with the time? Oh, 5 minutes, okay. Then 3 slides about IRMA and how we are dealing with this new ecosystem and how we implement it. Yesterday was about implementation and business models. Because we are open source, we have 2 ways of implementing IRMA. You can, of course, take the open source, implement it yourself, and run it. And that part is the left part. We say, okay, of course, that could be for free, but we are now working towards more of a subscription model. We say, okay, could we, based on users, have some fair use policy over there? For instance, we are working closely together with Chipsoft. It's the healthcare in the Netherlands. They're implementing IRMA themselves. They have a lot of users, and then once a year we have a talk with them. Okay, how large is your user base which is using IRMA right now? And then you have some fee that can add to your development of this open source wallet. The other one is the broker solution, because we see also some clients who say, okay, we don't want to implement and host and maintain this open source code ourselves. So can we connect via a broker? But also we see a world emerging with different wallets. So yesterday was also one of the ideal solutions in the Netherlands. When you want to pay, you choose your bank and then you pay. That could be also a kind of solution within this ecosystem. So when you are at a site or in an app and you want to use this kind of digital identity wallet, then first you choose which wallet you have. And then, of course, you can provide the data they want or to collect the data you want. And for this second solution, we also have the broker solution. So you can connect to via Signicat, and then it's run on a different way. And then it's more a transaction model. Then or a transaction bundle model was also yesterday one of the solutions around the business case. Then you can, of course, monitor the transactions that is going via the broker, and then you can have some payments based on that model. Our roadmap and our strategy, because this world is moving in our view in 3 tracks. We have, of course, we are self in control, so we are building with municipalities, building with healthcare, building with education on use cases. Please try out these new kind of wallets. We have in our own control, we see that this wallet should be EIDAS high, so EIDAS 2.0, you should be EIDAS high certified, so we are really investing in device binding, in all kind of security measures, so that we are ready for EIDAS high. And of course, we are continually working our design and usability and new functionality. And also on new sources. Maybe it's interesting to know, now in IRMA we have a connection with the BAP, that's the Dutch PID, the personal ID. You log in via the DigiD, and then you collect your personal details, your identity. But we're also working now with the Dutch Chamber of Commerce on an organizational ID, and that are different, of course, different use cases you can work with credentials from the Dutch Chamber of Commerce. That's the part we are self in control. The next part is, of course, in the Netherlands, it's quite interesting to monitor and participate in this new ED, European Digital Identity community, and also solution. They are start building a open source solution. Of course, we said, okay, we have an open source wallet. If you want to try it, be our guest. So hopefully they are starting with not on zero, but with a current solution that works. And of course, the third track, there's a lot of things coming from the European Union. So a lot of stuff will be have to be added to that wallet to comply to all kind of regulation, standardization, interfacing stuff. So that's probably the stuff we need to implement the coming 2 years. And we also, the third track is we actively participate in the EU, the reference wallet tender, because I believe 10 years ago, Bart Jacobs in the Netherlands started this from the University of Nijmegen, this project from, okay, what should this digital identity wallet look like and work like? That's the result of that is the IRMA wallet. And we are hoping that the IRMA wallet should be an example for not only the Netherlands, but also an example for the EU. So that's the reason why we also actively participating in the last track, not only in the Netherlands, but also in the large-scale pilots in the EU. And then hopefully in the next 2 years, a lot of this stuff that is still developing is getting clearer and clearer. And the nice thing is not only thinking, but it's also doing. And that's I think, the thing I want to conclude with. This is important. This is an unknown territory. We have to start working with it. We have to start experimenting with this. And I have to start seeing what is working and isn't working. And the last years, maybe we have too much, there was too much talk and too less experimenting together. Of course, there were solo POCs and so all kind of solo projects, but I think now it's the moment that we start working together on this new ecosystem. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Very good. Let's get all the speakers up here because we now have some time for some Q&A. So if you get on stage here. You all mentioned some challenges. I mean, the tower of SSI, the identity puzzle, and how to convince the institutes to go along with this. I mean, to make a success out of this, we need 3 players, right? We need to get a user support. We need to have somebody supplying the attributes. And we need to have somebody consuming the attributes. If one of them decides, this is not interesting, it's not going to fly. How do we incentivize these parties to go along?
Yeah. I want to have yours. It's better, it's bigger. Now, I think we have to realize that there are no 3 parties, there are 3 roles. And everybody plays each role. I myself can be an issuer of credentials. I know your name now, so I can issue your name and say, with a certain amount of assurance, I know John Eric is John Eric and he works at Signicode. I'm also a holder, and I'm also a verifier. So by making clear that everybody can play a different role, they have a power balance in this. And I think that concept of everybody can play a different role is important on convincing people to go along with it.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because when you look at the different parties separately, you could ask this question. Maybe we should look at what are the values of this whole ecosystem. And of course, a lot of these talks are tending to this relying party, there's a lot of value over there. But we also see in our pilots that there is quite some value in the user side. It's not only give you more control, more privacy, more security, but also the most important one maybe it's if you do it right, it gives you also a lot of ease of use to arrange all kind of stuff. Maybe the interesting question about the issuers is why are they participating in this new ecosystem? What's in there for them? So that's maybe the biggest challenge, because you need data start flowing via these wallets to have some use cases. If you now have enough data, then I'm convinced that this whole thing is taking off. But the main question is maybe how are we going to interest all those issuers to participate?
Yeah, I would say in our ecosystem, and I mapped those roles already for you, you see that each has their role. And if we look at our current federation, we do have quite the number of participants already. So for us, it's not necessarily a question of how do we get everyone to participate, but if we move to a different model, how do we migrate? So I think for us, it's a bit of a different question, because I do think the incentive to join is clearly already there. Yeah.
Yeah, and Peter, you mentioned the users. Mm-hmm. My question is, do the users care? And I've been asking, if Esther was here, she would kill me. I mean, I asked, well, what's the killer app? Maybe it's the free, cheap pizza at Domino's. I mean, what are the good... How can we make the users care? I mean, people share all their stuff on Facebook, right?
I think users do care, but the way that users care, there's a difference between caring and actually being able to act on that feeling, right? It's now so difficult to enact those issues around privacy because it's thousands of flicking switches that you need to do. It's very unclear. Policies are still unclear. So the vision that we have, it's not yet reality, right? And we need to make ease of use very simple, and we need to make it very simple to say, okay, I want to turn this or this off, and it needs to be in very simple language, really baseline. And then we might see if users then, that level of caring and usability becomes a bit more in sync with what we, I think, as specialists would want it to be.
Those toddlers.
Mm-hmm. And toddlers, yeah, those toddlers in the boardroom, yeah. If they can use it, then it'll be okay, yeah.
Yesterday I used the word jungle because we have a jungle of passwords, we have a jungle of forms to fill in, we have a jungle of accounts, and we are all used to that. But I hope that within 5 years you're looking back and the movie this morning, and you say, oh, do you remember those passwords? Do you remember all those forms you have to fill in with all those the same data? Or all those small lockers, all those different accounts you have to keep up to date. Hopefully, when you look back, then you say, okay, this is the new reality.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, and I think we should even take it one step further, because you're talking about time well saved. Mm. It's saved by filling out forms, and it's saved by sharing your data in a very efficient way. But we should also make clear that it's time well spent. Mm. That the way you interact with companies, with other institutions, you get back a lot of it. Yeah. So the relationship you have is more equal than it is today. So then it's really time well spent. And that's something that's not in the heads and hearts of the most participants yet.
Yeah, and yesterday was also one of the things what was mentioned, that those wallets are now, when they only contain data, they are pretty dumb wallets. Is there some intelligence also in those wallets in the future that generates value for you? Not only ease of use, but also value. And what kind of value? That's also an interesting question. And then how more value this wallet is creating for you, how interesting, of course, more interesting it gets.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. I think one value was mentioned this morning, sort of watching that you don't do anything stupid. I mean, protecting me against my stupidity. Yeah. Questions from the audience? Yes, I'll bring the microphone.
Yeah, so maybe a remark. What I noticed is that a lot of let's say actions now are from a person to a business use case. I personally believe there is more value on the table for business to business use case. I'm quite happy that I see now that organization IDs are becoming part of IRMA. I also see in the talk, the other talk, let's say the employee discussion. I would like to have more focus on that part and see if we can bring more value on the table there, because I think looking to the IAM industry, most of the value is in the business-to-business part.
Good comment.
Yeah, a good comment, and there's also a discussion about, is there also an organizational wallet? So is that next to your personal wallet, is there an organizational wallet, and what should that wallet contain and connect to maybe your personal wallet? It's an interesting area, and I think a crucial area. I work at the Dutch registry of the .nl domain. That's also a registry of domains connected to a person or connected to a organization. In the EU, there's discussion around trust lists. It's a list with companies, and who are those companies? What are the credentials of the companies? How trustworthy are those companies? So I think the business side is underlighted in this discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's coming, because there's also another aspect of it. It's the SSI of things. There's also EU regulation that in 2026 a lot of things should have a product passport, and we could have the same technology used for things as well. For example, a battery passport. Where do the ground materials of your battery in your car or at your home or even in your mobile phone, where they come from? What's the CO2 footprint of it? Where can it be used and where can it be reused? It's really also an SSI problem from qualified and trusted data, and how do you share them along a value chain? And there's an enormous business interest in SSI for things. So perhaps that will be the accelerator for thinking in business to business.
I guess I can comment from the education perspective as well, because you mentioned employers. And for us, it's really, like, for institutes, it's very formalized who gets to give out a diploma or a credential, right? And it becomes a bit more difficult when it's commercial parties. So there are many, many firms that might give out lean green belts or whatnot. I'm sure some of you have some. And the question for us is, how do we integrate those credentials, for example, into our edu badges system, and who's going to, make that registry of those commercial certifications that are given out? Who's responsible for that? So that's a question that we're still struggling with. So I don't necessarily have an answer. Sorry.
More questions?
I would like to hear a little bit more about the use cases that you're looking into. Which use cases are you prioritizing, or where are you really looking at that you would be liking to have into your wallet? And more from business perspective or user perspective, what kind of use cases can we expect?
When you look at the IRMA wallet, we from historical point of view, we are more in the public domain than in the private domain. So we have active use cases in the municipalities in Netherlands. Nijmegen is also always a strong promoter of our app, and is now working on all the processes to connect them to the IRMA app. We are working with Amsterdam also. This you see on the municipality side that they say, oh, they see this wallet coming and they want to prepare for this wallet. Health already mentioned. So we see the first doctors, the local doctors in the Netherlands are using IRMA to log into patients' accounts. The PGO's, the medical, your medical file system, the persoonlijke gezondheidsomgeving. It's where you can collect all your medical data in a site and then share it with all kind of means. They are in need of a good identification, in need of a good authorization mechanism, and a lot of them using IRMA of this kind of wallets. And we start working on the educational part. So you've seen a lot of different public domains, they see this coming. And of course, when it is pushed by the government, it's also logical that they say, okay, when the government is pushing this kind of wallets, then it's logical that we start using this kind of wallets. But we are also working, for instance, with now actively with insurance companies, because they also have no strong authentication mechanism their own, and they also are often part of their own ecosystem. For instance, health, you have the health insurance, you have the hospitals, the doctors, and they all need to know what you are insured for. All kind of private parties. In the Netherlands, it's difficult that in the public domain you can use DigiD, but in the private domain you can't use DigiD. So they are looking for a solution that works in both domains. So from our point of view, we start in the public domain, but now are getting more and more in the private domain.
And is driver's license also part of this journey?
Yeah, but we talked to the RDW, and they say we wait for the first wallet in the Netherlands that is certified. So it is already possible, and they have, I believe, they have also a proof of concept on their own, but they are waiting for the first real wallets to say.
Just for the remote audience, the question was about driver's licenses. You had any comment on use cases?
No, you elaborate on most of the important use cases. I think in the private domain, there's also one we can tick off, is the financial domain. So the know your customer due diligence process is a very expensive process currently, and financial industry is looking into it. And how can we use credentials on proving that currently you're not a terrorist or a criminal, and even more interesting in verifying continuously that you're still not, and you're still not being abused for it. And personally, I'd like to have a use case. I haven't found anybody yet supporting me. Only an idea is privacy-enhanced shopping online. If I go to allekabels.nl and buy an HDMI cable, why leave my name? Why leave my address? Starting preparations. Thank you very much. I haven't found any traction yet in online retail, but let's talk. Yeah.
It's interesting, every time I'm in a forum discussing this, there are new use cases popping up, and I think we're going to see so many use cases. Last week we were discussing use cases, and what about traveling? I mean, every time you come to a new city, you need to download a new app for public transport. Right? And it's often in the local language that you don't know, and the name is not connected to the city. What if you could have the travel tokens as part of the wallet? Yeah. Just yet another use case. When we get that we have this system, there's so much we can do.
Yeah, we're discussing it, especially with mobility as a service providers. And you can see that currently, just as the same with the know your customer problem, they're currently so much they try to grow so hard that they focus on their own company and try to fail to see the ecosystem around it. I think in 1-2 years from now, they have to. So
exactly,
we're in preparation.
Right, and also car wallets.
Yep.
Somebody, I think it was Katrina last year, that mentioned, your car has a wallet. It can negotiate with the wallets of the other cars to get out of the way because I'm in a rush and pay them some tokens. But yeah, we can laugh, but I mean, we can get all these kind of use cases. Let's say there was a question back here somewhere. Yes.
I was triggered by Bob's comment on how currently wallets are fairly dumb. No offense to all the hard work that's been done. And I think they're also very much siloed in the sense that they're very technology-wise siloed. So there's obviously still a lot of interop work that needs to be done. But also from a point of the interaction that they allow the user to do, just sharing data to some service feels very limited to me. Why can't the wallet itself be the starting point for the transactions? That would be, I think, a much more natural interaction pattern. And but given that we have so many of these wallets, do we need perhaps some sort of a verifiable interactions model as well, that you could sort of attach on top of the wallet so that you can have interoperable. I mean, you will have like 5 different wallets that you will have to support at least if you're a service provider in the future. Can you sort of bring that interaction towards the wallet and not have them go to the websites or whatever where they have to go?
Yeah, interesting thought, because then you're mixing, from my point of view, the wallet and the relying party, the service. And sometimes a small part of the service is maybe it's logical to combine with your data, but I think the model now that you have a separate wallet with data that's not only about sharing, it's about identifying, it's about login, it's about signing, all kind of stuff. And maybe when the wallet is getting more intelligent, there is some small service you can maybe download that looks at your data and says, okay, you're paying a lot of money for instance, insurances, and then, but when you really want to change for your insurance, then it's directing you to the place where you can can really swap your insurance, and then you share your data with, for instance, in the Netherlands, the independents of this world, and then you arrange a new insurance. Because otherwise, this wallet, I think, will explode with all kind of services. So this maybe in some domains, and I know where you're heading to. Maybe in some domains you could make some special wallet for education or something like that. But then you're combining.
Yeah. Upside would be that everybody will start building one single wallet to do one feature. Basically.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's also not going to fly.
Yeah. So we are unfortunately running out of time. This is a good discussion, and yeah, I mean, we could discuss this forever, right? It's really exciting. I'm going to let each of you come with, one final statement or advice to, going forward. Ladies first.
Oh, thank you. No, I guess we've talked about trust, and we've talked about trust in the hallways here as well, and governance has come up several times. And I think, the promise of SSI is often, it will, eliminate the need for trust. But at the same time, we do need to govern this ecosystem if it becomes a new one, with new rule sets, with new ways of working together. And I think that perhaps some of people in the room here have influence on the decisions around who is going to be governing specific parts of our specific ecosystems. And I hope that together, at least in collaboration, we can have certain principles, certain public values perhaps that we share, and make the decisions for those governing parties in a right way, so that the individual that it's ultimately actually about is actually empowered when it comes to their personal data. So I hope we'll all act with that in mind as we leave the room today.
Excellent, thank you. Peter.
Yeah, this is an ecosystem, so let's start learning by doing, not think and not do, but learning by doing, and then together, of course, not separate projects, but let's start connecting these projects and learning by doing together.
Yeah, I can only append on that. And there's not one ecosystem, there are many, so we should listen to each other and collaborate. SSI is really what binds us together and makes it fertile grounds for further innovation. So listen into what your neighboring ecosystem is doing and learn from it and append from it and make it even better. So together we learn, together we grow. And let's keep it open. Please, let's not have silos.
Thank you so much to all of you for your presentations and your insight and good discussion, and thank you for joining the session. So let's give them a big hand of applause.